I'm Van Sebastian here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge Season 10 Episode 4 interview. We'll be talking with M.W. Lindberg and discussing their book Black Hole Recess. So let's get to know our guest. M.W. Lindberg is a queer author, husband, gamer, tea drinker, and support person to an anxious chihuahua. He is the author of unusual novellas and other short works. He spent a few decades in the theater as an actor, director, writer, and teacher, and has since pivoted to fiction. He lives in Queens, New York. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Very excited to be here.
So I have to say, I have a friend who has a Chihuahua, and we all call it a Chihuahua. And
Yes,
it
we
took
do
me
it too,
a lot
just because.
of retraining to not say that during your bio.
That is fu I'm surprised I've never heard that, and I might
Never?
start that now.
Oh yeah,
No.
no, no, no. That's a running thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's good.
So this friend's Chihuahua had some fun with a corgi, and they had puppies, and so we called the puppies corgi wawas,
That's great.
and they looked
Ours
like
is
super fuzzy chihuahuas.
those must be very cute. Ours is actually half mini pincher,
Oh,
which we didn't know they
Okay,
called
I
them
want to
this
know how
when
that dynamic happened.
yeah, well the mini pinchers are pretty close to Chihuahua size, but
Okay.
they call them chin pins apparently, which we didn't know when we got him, but
that's adorable.
yeah, he's a chin pin.
So, getting back to you, life in the theater, pivoting to fiction, it sounds like you've always been a storyteller, but actually putting words to paper is work. So what was the motivation to do that?
Yeah, I have always been doing it, and it was something when I did officially pivot to just writing books. Uh,
Just writing.
I think it was my mom who was like, "Well, you've always been doing that, right?" I was like, "Oh, no, yeah, you're right, actually." And then I have an artifact to share that I'm very excited we still have in our possession. This is my book of stories that I wrote in third grade.
Oh wow.
Uh, and so
We'll be
I've
getting a
always
reading
been
from
doing
that a
that.
little later in the show.
Exactly. I've already been thinking like, of course, to get to know me as an author, the first thing I did was turn this very skinny book into four separate stories, to fit as much in there as I could. And I've already been thinking, oh, maybe I rewrite these someday about the dragon who can fly. How would I write that story now? Uh, but yeah, so I've always been doing that, and even like further ahead in middle school, I remember my friend who wanted to be a comic book artist, and I made a comic book, like
Nice.
3-page comic book that I wrote and he drew, and we colored in together. And yeah, did theater in high school, of course, so I was always writing little skits, writing little plays. I had a great drama teacher who let me direct a little one-act play that I had written as a little side project.
Neat.
Um, and then when I got into doing theater, that I was always writing and working on every angle of it. So it really is something that I've always been doing. Uh, but I kind of burnt out on the theater a bit. And when I stepped away from that, I was like, well, I what do I do with all of this creative energy that I still have? I was
Hmm.
like, well, I've always thought about writing an actual book. And so I started doing that, and it started flying out of me. So I was like, okay, there's something here. And I have been really enjoying it. So
Nice. So we're here to talk about Black Hole Recess. Is this your fifth book?
yes.
Did I count that right?
This is my fifth book, but one of those is a very short piece.
Okay.
So it's and it only that one only exists in on Kindle as an ebook. So
Got it.
uh yeah, technically there are five books out there, but
Nice.
I guess I get a little shy about calling one of those an actual book.
Fair. So if I were to see you at like a book event or a Pride event and I saw that beautiful purple cover on a table and said, "What's this about?" What would you tell me?
So my 5-word summary
Five word.
is
Wow.
5-word summary: Queer Kids versus Cloud Monster. If you have time to stay at the booth a little
I
longer,
do
I will
now.
Yeah, you'll
expand.
elaborate.
Yeah, did I catch you at that? Great. So this is a sort of disaster book about um, uh, kids who so a mysterious black cloud has descended on this small town and takes people who stay outside for too long. So we join the story after this has already been going on for some time uh, by meeting a group of kids who have been trapped in their school. They've only got one teacher left and their janitor, and it's probably just like a classroom worth of kids, but it's kids of all ages that go to this particular school. Uh, and they are coping with uh, being trapped in school together and kids being what they are. The teacher has to let them out sometimes. And the cloud moves around, so it kind of patrols the town, we sort of learn. And so when the sky is clear, it's safe to go outside. So the kids get supervised short recesses to run around the playground a little bit until the cloud comes, and then you have to go back inside. So this particular day that we start on, something happens that becomes sort of the last straw for some of the kids, and they decide to take matters into their own hands and set off on an adventure to find their families, or they sort of all have it's an adventure book. There's a party of different wild kids, and they've sort of all got their own reasons for going off on this trek. But the main thing is that they don't know if anyone's doing anything to try to address this problem that the town is living with. So they go off to try to take matters into their own hands and get answers about what even is going on, because the book is very cagey about what this cloud actually is and what might actually be happening here.
Nice. Something I saw, just as we're going to dive into it, kind of want to put the disclaimer out there. You at one point had said it's a book about children, but not necessarily for children.
Yeah, yeah. So it is a book about kids. It's a book about I don't specifically give ages for the kids, but I think we're talking like 8 to 13-year-old kids in my
Okay.
head. Um, and
So
it's
very much Stranger Things kind of.
very much, yeah, very much
Yeah.
early Stranger Things kind of age. Um, and while it's not it's not an R-rated movie, I would say, although
Mhm.
there is one kid who swears occasionally, because there's got to be.
Yeah.
Um, but it is a bit dark at times, and about it's a book about children having to cope with violence. If you can imagine a world in which children have to cope with violence that is not of their own making and completely out of their control, uh, that is a large part of what's behind the book thematically. So, yeah, so there is a little thing at the beginning that this is a book about children in danger, and it's not for children. Uh, but uh, yeah, yeah, if that makes sense.
It does. Without being spoilery, did some of the inspiration for this come from current events?
Certainly, it certainly fed into it. The book actually started, or the idea for this thing started from an artist named James Jean, uh, who years and years ago I came across his art, and he made a series of playground portraits, essentially, of uh, strange children creatures uh, on the playground. And I was immediately taken with that and was like, oh, these are characters. This is so interesting. And that kicked around in my brain for years and years and years. That I would just and now and then think back to, oh yeah, what are those kids up to? Like, what is the world that they live in? And there's an ominous sense in a lot of his art as well that had always been part of it. So, um, it started very much with character, and then in fleshing out the world in my head, and certainly when I started writing it, absolutely fed by current events and the state of things that kids have to deal with day to day.
Right. In following up on what you just mentioned about the artist, can you highlight a couple of your characters?
Yeah, absolutely. So we start the book with RJ, who is the jump rope girl. At every recess, she has her own jump rope that she keeps with her uh, all day, whether they're inside or outside. And whenever they get a recess, she runs out, she starts jump roping. The book actually uh, steps through, the kids all take turns as the narrator of the book,
Hmm.
essentially. So we start with RJ, we meet a different kid each chapter, essentially taking over the story. Um, so RJ is our introduction to this group as she is jumping rope and looking around the playground and sort of letting us know about who's out there, what they're up to, who likes to play ball, who likes to run around, the older kids sneaking off, doing something in the shadows. Um, and her thoughts about this one poor teacher that's left in charge of all of these kids, and a little bit about the exposition of what's been going on. But uh, I love writing from inside of characters, so it's very much what's RJ's take on all of this, what's her thoughts on all of this, and then in the next chapter we hear from Aldous, who is sort of the leader of the group, though he's also. So the other thing that I will say is that all of the chapters I have titled with playground insults essentially. So RJ's chapter is called Four Eyes because she has glasses. There is a bully in the book who does call RJ Four Eyes. So that is very present. Aldous is the sissy. And I, of course, don't mean, of course, I'm on the side of these children. I was a Four Eyes and a sissy, and still am proudly both. But it was, I think for me, those words are another kind of violence to put into the mix.
Hmm.
And and as something to sort of play against because Aldous is the sissy, but he is also the sort of leader of this group, and he becomes the impetus for them to take on this adventure, um, which, some people would say is very unsissy-like. I say, of course, the sissy is gonna start the drama, um, but so that's part of it as well. And then after Aldous, we get to Aldous' best friend, who is Flick, who is the tomboy, which is I think such an interesting word because it's not I feel like tomboy is not a playground insult. It's a word that adults use to explain a child that isn't fitting into what
Gender
they think.
norms.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so that becomes a part of it as too, a part of it too. We meet some adults who, have been doing questionable things and have questionable opinions about what's going on, and that's absolutely a part of it. Uh, is this world that the children are trying to survive in is uh, one way or another, certainly of the adults making. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so we go through. There are eight of them, eight of these kids, and they are, two of them are non-binary, using they them pronouns. One of them is in a wheelchair. Uh, Two of them are siblings. Both Aldous and Flick are dealing with the crushes that they're having on two of the other kids because they're just getting to that point in their lives where they're starting to crush on people. Uh, so there's a little bit of gentle queerness in that as well.
Hmm.
Um, because that's always very important to me. I'm always drawn to stories with huge casts of characters, and I love diversifying that cast as much as possible. So
Yeah. Well, it's a
uh,
big, beautiful world.
it is a big, beautiful world. Uh,
Do they ever
and
do they ever find out what the source of the monster is? Like, I mean, does you don't have to explain how they do it, but I mean, is it something that they figure out? Like, Stranger Things, we figure out Vecna finally is like the one that we're all after. I mean, do they ever find that out?
so yes, I can tell you that they get uh, the kids that make it to a certain point get an answer um, that some of them are satisfied with and some of them are not. But it, of course, falls to them to find some kind of solution to this thing. Um, and yeah, and I wasn't sure uh to go behind the scenes on as I was writing this, I wasn't sure how it was going to land for a long time in writing it and in what the answer was or how they were going to find out about it before I had finished a first draft. Um and yeah, and the way I landed with that within myself was like, okay, yeah, there is an answer to this, but how do the kids feel about that answer?
Hmm.
And that is something that I really like about being able to switch perspectives and jump from kid to kid uh, as narrator as the book goes on, because you are stuck with that character's interpretation of what's going on, which I love and find really fascinating and find, um, for me, a really exciting way to tell a story that, we get to the end of one kid's chapter and something very dramatic is happening, but the next kid is thinking about something else. So you're suddenly like, wait, what? I need to know what happened, but she is not thinking about, she wasn't looking at that. So how do you, I love those little challenges for myself as a writer of how do you catch people up while you're working within the confines of I have stuck myself inside this one character's perspective on the story. Um, so that becomes a question for the ending as well, is the character that we're left with in charge of finding the solution to this thing. It's very much her solution to it. Uh, so
Yeah,
it's
because I
very
mean, you
much
as
about
as the creator, you can go either way. You can keep it mysterioso, in that the kids
yeah.
never, so you can find a way to tell it without really revealing what it was and let the reader make up their mind what they think it
Exactly. And
was.
still, even once I knew what it was and was going back doing rewrites and things, the early chapters are it's very unclear what's going on. And I have friends who were reading it for me and were like, I don't know if this is going to turn into a David Lynch movie. Bless David Lynch.
Right.
If this is this existential? Is it alien? Is it, there's so many possibilities. And given my other work as well, I love taking things in an unexpected direction. So, uh, yeah, it keeps it open for as long as I possibly could.
Nice. Can I ask a question about a subplot?
Absolutely.
Is there a reconciliation with the bully?
There is not, though
Okay.
we do. Uh, the bully has her moments and I think learns some things, but um we don't get a specific reconciliation between
Okay.
her and
The others.
some of the bullied. Yeah.
Right. All right. So Baz, I know that perception is your back alley for sure. Any questions?
Well, yeah, because I mean, this is what I write. I write from about perceptions because perceptions are things that govern everything we do, but we
Mm,
very seldom give them their due.
yeah.
And so as children, you're obviously going to have very, very strong feelings, because kids are very, very knee jerky in a lot of what they decide and do, because they don't understand that's what's happening in the background,
Yeah,
is that
exactly.
their order of importance of what is important in a situation are going to be very different, and how
Exactly.
they act on those things are very different, and it can surprise their friends or side characters going, where are you going with this, I mean, so I think it's interesting that you're doing this from a children's point of view. Did you have to work out how you were not going to make them 40-year-olds playing teenagers like you see in most TV shows?
It was, yeah, I definitely had to think about it. Uh, I have a theater background as I've mentioned, and did a lot of acting, and I always find myself when I start writing that I'm like, oh, I'm like working from character. I'm like thinking about, as I said, like the inside of these people. Uh and I think that was really helpful actually in getting to know these kids and really working from uh letting myself work from a place of where they are without thinking at first about without worrying at first about making the story clear or like what are the actual beats that I need to hit as the adult author outside of it. Um, and I think that setup ended up working really well for me in navigating the book, um, in terms of letting them really be who they are and
Right.
be concerned with what they're concerned with and not what they're not.
What time
And
frame are we talking? I mean, where what time setting is this?
it's nebulous. I use that word a lot because it's a cloud word. But it's nebulous. It's potentially a little futuristic, but I mean there are phones, there's electricity, there are, there's a school bus. So it's not completely divorced from time, but it's not super specific
Well, the reason
about
why I
when.
ask is because, you have a lot of nostalgia works like Stranger Things, a
Hmm.
lot of kids nowadays, and I don't mean kids in as in little kids, but I mean like, teenagers and up through early adulthood. They tend to look a lot to advances in my generation, in Gen X, and how we grew up having complete autonomy in what we did and what dangers we got into. And,
Hmm.
we would just go all out. And one of the things I find, and this is the reason why I asked that question, is that they love the way that that's portrayed, and the way that as we as kids used to live our lives, that our parents were pretty much absent for a good part of it. We would just do things with our friends. We were always outside. We're always creating adventures for ourselves.
Hmm.
Being inside was not a thing. So the reason why I was asking it is because, given that nostalgic kind of feel, and a lot of kids nowadays, I was getting to, they like the Goonies because of that same kind of interaction, and the kids get involved in something much darker, much bigger than they
Hmm.
are. um and so there's a nostalgic kind of feel to it, which I think a lot of adults from our generation would really find interesting and fascinating in your book, because it would speak to their own upbringing in that way. And so, were you cognizant of that sentimentality, or that nostalgic kind of sentiment towards children's stories? I mean, children stories as in about children, not necessarily
Yeah,
for them.
yeah. I think I certainly I was certainly carrying that in myself in, this is about kids going on an adventure together. It is, you can't not mention Stranger Things. They get on bikes at one point. Uh you could think about Goonies and yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. But I don't think I was actively working towards trying to capture that. But I love that you bring that up, and it's such an interesting angle to think about. That it does actually help me now that the book's already done, place these kids in time a bit more, because I do think they don't quite know how to go off on their own like that. I don't think they have the experience of that kind of unsupervised play that uh, was absolutely a way that I grew up as well.
Nice.
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah, I'm just saying because if you kept it nebulous, then someone from my generation might place them there unless you
Exactly.
specifically
And yeah,
call
it's
out something
yeah,
that
I
wouldn't
think
be there.
it's yeah, I feel like it's very much open to this could be the 80s, this could be the 2080s.
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Right. So, how have you found putting non-binary pronouns into your work?
It's been very easy for me.
Uh-huh.
It's been very natural for me. Um, so my first book uh is a horror novel about a non-binary protagonist and the nightmares that they are having. And that I don't even remember a moment of thinking, oh, what's the gender of this person going to be? It was just that that's how they came, that's how they started, coming to me when the book began. Um, After that, I wrote Queer on a Bench, which is basically a non-binary coming out book. Uh, in which a does what it says on the tin, as they say. There's a queer who sits down on a park bench, and that's the entire book. But the character sits down as a gay man, and by the time they get up, they are a non-binary beauty. And the book is about what happens in between those two moments. And the character is called M, different from me. It's not me. They have an older sister. I have a younger sister. They're not the same person. Um, uh, and I wrote that in
You need to put that
20s.
you should put that underneath your author name. No, it's
Not
not
me.
about me.
Not me. Not me. Uh, and I wrote that in 2016, 2017. And I am just now starting to use he slash they myself publicly. So I think I'm on a journey that's been quite long and that the my work has been way ahead of me on. But I use almost exclusively they them when I write non-binary characters.
Hmm.
Though Black Hole Recess is the first time that I uh, conjugate they them as a singular, which is one of the hangups about non-binary pronouns usually
Right.
for people can be, oh, I want to say they go to the store. I don't want to say they goes to the store because that doesn't sound right. Um, and we get to do whatever we want, first of all. Um, uh, but I usually do the they go to the store kind of conjugation. Black hole recess was the I'm gonna just let these kids go with the singular. As I said, there are multiple non-binary characters. The teacher that they're left with is non-binary. So the kids all call them mixed teacher, as opposed to Mr. or Ms. It's mixed
Hmm.
teacher, even though they have a name. That's what all the kids decided to call them. Uh, so I have done the singular conjugation in Black Hole Recess, which has the sort of added benefit of sounding a bit more childish, which was not the intent, but it comes out that way.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think readers in general are more forgiving of children doing stuff like that too, though. Like it's a great way to
Absolutely.
introduce it to the public.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, but yeah, it's always been there for me. I can't not include it. It's always part of whatever world starts growing in my head.
Hmm.
Um, the uh the four and a half book that I was talking about, the Kindle exclusive, is called Away from the Mountain and is a post-apocalyptic, it's a very meditative post-apocalyptic book that is not about the drama of whatever happened, but is just about a small cast of characters finding each other and having little moments together. And that book is completely devoid of gender signifiers of any kind.
Nice.
It's they, them pronouns for everyone, two characters having a romantic sexual relationship together. We don't get into what's happening in there because that's none of our business right now. And that was very fun and freeing and became sort of part of the landscape of that book too, because uh, they're dealing with, all of them are dealing with uh, this landscape where we're not sure what happened, but we're not sure what happened, but so much has been taken away from them. And I think one way to look at it is that gender has been taken away. Gender was one of the things that disappeared in that apocalypse. Uh, and uh, so, yeah, so I find it very freeing. And I also find it a way to keep me on my toes as a writer
Hmm.
because it's, it can get confusing if you're writing, oh, they got on the school bus. You're like, okay, well, I could be saying all of the kids got on the school bus, or
Right.
just Luke, the non-binary kid, got on the school bus. So how do you write to make that clear? I find that those kinds of things fun to have to suss out.
Right. I had a very interesting experience where it was a linguistic moment of genius on my part, I assure you. No,
Love those.
somebody was complaining about the they them pronouns, and I immediately had the right explanation. I was like, "Well, you've been doing it your whole life." I have
Yeah.
not. Rah, 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 rah. I'm like,
Yes.
"You
No, no, yes,
have,"
you have.
because when your doorbell rings and you're busy, and someone in your house answers it, closes the door, and comes into your room, your immediate question is, "What did they want?" You don't care about the gender of the person. You want to know what they
Yeah,
wanted.
Right.
yeah.
You've
And
been
it
doing it
goes
Or
your
even when
back.
you
whole
say,
life.
or even when you say, "Where's Kenny?" Oh, they're over there.
Yeah, exactly. Even sometimes when you know who you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, and it goes like it seems like it shouldn't even need to be a conversation
It
anymore.
shouldn't.
Examples go back in history to
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Shakespeare or whenever uh that it is. Yeah, it's just a natural thing that we do. And but it's interesting, yeah, to push a little further into that and be like, okay, so what is actually the problem here? Um and I love all the various pronouns that come up, Zer and
Right.
all the things that people come up with. I am so in favor and in love with all of the creativity that can be had in
Hmm.
that. Uh, though I tend to stick with they them when I'm writing.
Fair.
It's really funny because one day at a time, the reboot, there's a whole episode with Rita Moreno playing the grandmother who has her lesbian granddaughter with all her non-binary friends, and they go through this whole Caesar and all. She's
Oh my God, I
so
think I only
thoroughly
watched the
confused.
first season of
It's
that. I
brilliant.
gotta
It
find
is
that episode.
brilliant.
That's great.
Oh yeah, that one comes a little bit later, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta check that out.
Should have won awards. So you've teased a couple of your other books. Are there any you would like to highlight for folks?
Uh, I think Queer on a Bench is definitely one that I'm very proud of, and um, I feel like I consider myself a speculative fiction author. It's horror, it's sci-fi, it's kids trying to escape from a cloud monster. Queer on a Bench is more grounded in reality, I would say, because it is just a queer sitting on a bench and thinking about things. So I feel like it's probably the most accessible, and certainly for people that I know who have read it, and the few people who I didn't know who read it and reached out to me, which is always such a gift. Um, it's it's been, I think, the most. Oh, I don't want to say the most important of the books that I've written, but I think it's may have probably been the most important of the books that I've written. Um, but it's still a good, it's still a good introduction to me and the way that I write things because it is all over the place, stylistically and in form. Uh, it uh, it veers off into one chapter is 5 years from now. So we just see M 5 years in the future and what's going on. One chapter is just called Memories of Church. And it is just like popcorn memories, not mine, M's memories of growing up in church and little moments that fed into their identity and their journey. Um, and then there's a play script. One chapter is a play.
Oh,
Uh, so, that's how I love to do it. Just keep
Keep it fresh.
keep it fresh, grab
yep.
the wheel, spin it in another direction. I'm just trying to keep myself interested. And that's how it goes.
All right.
Uh, and that absolutely, that's a big part of the Black Hole Recess fabric as well. Is like, okay, RJ's had her time. Let's deal with Aldis's insecurities and burgeoning leadership skills, and then let's really veer off into seeing what the kid who can't stop running around the playground every day. Let's see what's going on in his head. Uh, and that's very much how my mind works. And when I was working in theater, things that I were writing myself, obviously big casts. I studied playwriting, I studied directing, I studied choreography. I had a little bit of everything. It was great. So I've done choreography as well. I love choreographing chaos. So that's a big part of it for me too. I want everything to be that the part of the Stephen Sondheim musical where everyone's singing something different at the same
Yeah.
time on top of each other, but it's somehow working.
Hmm.
That's my creative happy place.
Love it. Can we spill the tea about your covers?
Yes. Uh, here is Black Hole Recess and Queer on a Bench. So all of my covers, and this wasn't true until this year, Black Hole or 2024. Black Hole Recess just came out at the end of 2024. Um, and I spent the rest of 2024 having all of my covers redone so that they were all original art from people that I know, and all of the writing on the cover, except for the text on the back of one of the books, is my own handwriting, which came actually from Away from the Mountain, which was the meditative post-apocalyptic book. Um, I knew that that is the reason that I hesitate so much in calling that a book is that it's entirely flash fiction chapters, basically. So it's a bunch of tiny chapters that might be one sentence or might be one paragraph. And all put all together, it's really just a short story, but it was very important to present it, to let these be their own individual chapters. Um, and so as I was putting that together, my sister's a graphic artist and an artist. Um, and I was like, would you want to do this for me? Just like do a little like sketch of a cabin and that can be the book cover. And she was like, of course, of course. So, we have a great relationship and it was fun to collaborate together on that. And then she was like, what do you want for the title? Like, what should we do? She was like, I feel like the way that the sketch looks, you would want it to be sketched or something. I was like, let me like write something out. And then I'm like, I don't know how you get this from this piece of paper onto that book cover, but I think that's what I want. She's like, that's one of the easiest things for me to do. So
Yeah.
let's do that. Um, uh, and then I was like, that's great. And this is something I want to do because I'm a self-publisher, and I'm still very small in my uh, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? I still feel I have,
You're
these
not the distribution empire that you'd like to be.
yes, my empire is still very small. So I have these 5 books out, but I still feel very much at the beginning of building myself up.
Right.
Um, but I was like, oh, this is exciting to me as an idea that all of my books have my own writing on them, which even goes back to my book of stories from 3rd grade, which I bubble lettered the title of course. Um, and I was like, oh, I have all of these amazing friends who are artists. So my sister also did Forest Station, which is another book of mine. Black Hole Recess is an artist named Ginny Choi, who is a good friend of mine, a graphic designer as well. And Queer on a Bench is this amazing, if you get it in paperback, it's a full front and back
Oh, neat.
Oh,
uh,
lovely.
landscape of actually Washington Square Park in New York City. And that's by Daniel Joseph Durkin, who is a lovely gay artist friend of mine. And it's been an extra layer of um, fun and sort of connection with the work to be able to pick out a friend and collaborate
Highlight what they
on the
do.
design
Right.
of these things. Yeah, exactly. And
Hmm.
then build them up a little bit. My friend Ginny was so excited that I credited her on on the inside the book as the cover designer, and I was like, it never occurred to me not to do that. And then I found out that that's not really, people don't always do that. I'm like,
Right.
that's so strange. I'm like, yeah, you made this thing. I want your name on it. So that's yeah, so
Nice.
that's I guess my thing now, and I intend to keep going with it.
Love it. So I have danced around one of our bullet points because I don't know if the answer to it is also an answer to one of your get to know you questions.
Oh, it is, and I know exactly what you're gonna say, I think.
All right, then I think, is there anything else about your written work that you want people to know? And we'll save that for the get to know you list.
Great. Uh, I don't think so. Everything is short. I'm a novella writer. That's just how it comes out. I want to get on to the next thing. And even the thing that I have, as I said earlier, I want to split up into as many different pieces as I can. So, everything's short. It's easy to dip into, I think. Queer on a Bench is I think a great place to start. And certainly if you're not into horror or sci-fi, that is still on the table as a potential something to check out for you.
Nice.
And I also have on my website, which I will talk about later, but
Mhm.
um, I have some short fictions on there that are just online that you can read through. As I was wrestling with leaving theater, I wrote a Tumblr novel uh, called Theater Every Day, in which I wrote a piece of it every day for a year.
Wow.
Um, and it is about a huge cast of characters and their lives in theater. Um, it was my love letter slash complaint petition to the world of the theater. Uh, and that is still exists on Tumblr. So as long as Tumblr stands, you can get to that through my website.
Nice.
So there are a lot of little pieces to check out uh, if
Nice.
you feel like dipping in.
Are you curious what Rote Podcast is all about? Rote stands for Written on the Edge, and we are here to bring you weekly discussions about LGBTQ storytelling. That's right, all genres, all mediums, wide open. So, our guests will share personal accounts of living their artistic lives, their personal experiences writing, crafting, stories, music, filmmaking, all of it. But what we like to do is explore the edges of what's accepted and where storytelling should be headed. All right, are you ready for those get to know you questions?
I am. That's what I'm really here for. Who cares about my work? I want to
Forget all that.
forget all that. I want to talk about all of this
Right.
stuff.
Okay. Well, Can you name a movie that was better than the book?
Okay, I'm gonna say The Poseidon Adventure.
Really?
Yes, if you did not know, that was a novel first,
Yeah, yeah.
by Paul Gallico. I saw the Poseidon Adventure when I was probably way too young, and kicked off a an obsession with disaster movies and high
There were a lot of them in the
octane.
70s.
Yeah, exactly, right? And again, as I keep saying, all large cast of more or less diverse characters, depending on when it was made, and dealing with immediate disasters. So the book isn't bad, but it it goes places at the in the last like third of the book that it really doesn't need to go to, that I won't get into, so we don't have to put a content warning on the interview. But it gets very dark unnecessarily. It's
Mm,
not handled well, and it's treated sort of lightly. It's like all the bad things about how you could do something like that. Um, and it just it I was so excited to find the book, which I found maybe like 10 years ago in a library bargain bin or something for $1, paperback that immediately fell apart as soon as I finished reading it.
right.
um it just left me with such a weird. I was like, that wasn't. Oh, what?
Oh,
uh and it's strange because more people survive in the book. uh it's less it's oddly less of I mean, it's still, the whole thing of the Poseidon Adventure is the ship turns upside down, and it's awful, and it's the movie stays pretty close to the book until the book veers into the dark hallway. um but the movie seems to finds a way to end on a slightly more hopeful note
Yeah.
than the book does, uh even though the book has way more people being rescued.
oh.
But yeah, so
Okay.
that's what
All
I'm gonna
right.
say.
Well, which fictional character would you most like to be friends with?
I have always wanted to be uh Counselor Troy's gay best friend on the Enterprise, meeting her after her shift for some chocolate ice cream, in 10 forward, gossiping about who Commander Riker is dating this week. Uh
Fire at
I
will. No, literally, fire at will.
absolutely. Yeah, I think we'd have fun.
All right. All right. Well, what's the most fascinating fact that you know?
Okay, I tried to remember the Latin name and I just can't, it just won't stay in my head. Brassica oleracea is the plant from which we get broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, and more things. It is a plant that, through farming, selective farming, has been made to produce all of these different vegetables, depending on what they were, like, oh, these leaves are edible. Let's keep breeding for the leaves and we get kale, or like these weird flowers are kind of good. Let's keep breeding for them and we get cauliflower. I think it's fascinating.
Okay.
Have
Excellent.
Have you ever looked up the original color of a carrot?
Oh, I feel like I have. They're like either brown or purple, right?
Purplish blue, yeah.
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 Bananas also fascinating history.
Hmm.
What we eat now, it looks nothing like what a banana used to look like.
Right. Right. And we may end up losing them.
And
So,
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So, what was your favorite subject in school?
absolutely English. I had fantastic English teachers. I was always reading. I was always reading more than was required. I had multiple English teachers who would give me extra books because they knew I'd be reading ahead. Um, my favorite English teacher story is senior year of high school. We read Kate Chopin's The Awakening, which was a book that I loved, that I really connected with. But of course, we had to write an essay about it, and nonfiction is not my thing. And I, despite being a writer and being pretty good at schoolwork, essays were just always such torture for me. And it was so hard for me to write this essay about the awakening that instead of an essay, I wrote an epilogue. I wrote a new chapter for the end of the book that was about all of the characters left behind dealing with what happens at the end of that book. And I was just like, I don't care. I don't care. Fail me, whatever. This is all I can produce right now. This is what you get. And he did not fail me. He graded that like an essay, and I felt so affirmed. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just keep doing that. Uh,
Right, right.
I've been so lucky to have English teachers who supported my creativity in that way.
Excellent.
So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, before making a phone call, do you rehearse what you're going to say?
Yes, all the time. It is absolutely a social anxiety thing for me.
Wow.
Um, yeah, that
I
I
never even knew
just,
this was a thing until Vance put it on this question.
oh yeah.
I just
Yeah,
go
it
trudging
is.
headlong.
Yeah, no, I need to know as much as I can just to feel safe sometimes. I rehearse my weekly coffee order that I get on the weekends, and it's the same every week. I'm
Wow.
like walking over, I'm like, this is how I'm gonna say it. 'Cause that's just what my brain needs to do.
Okay. Well, okay. Now you learned something new. All right.
Yeah.
So, what current event or causes are you passionate about?
How much time do we have? Uh
Right.
Yeah, so many things. I mean, trans rights are so important, and queer rights in general, all the queer rights, the right of non-binary people to exist, to use whatever pronouns we want to use. Um, and as I think you were going to ask about earlier, I've done a lot of volunteer work. Uh, over the last 10 years, especially. And mental health advocacy is something that I'm very passionate about. I spent 6 years as a volunteer crisis counselor for Crisis Text Line, which you can text 741 or now you can also text 988 if you are feeling in crisis and just need to talk to someone. So I was one of those someones answering those texts for a good 6 years. It's been I'm on an extended break from that. You have to take breaks, of course, now and then. But that has been a huge. It's been transformative for me, even on that side of the conversation. Um, in terms of prioritizing my own mental health and the things that I need to do, but also um, being able so directly to uh, pitch in and help somebody out just by listening to them. Like 9 times out of 10, it's just somebody who just needs to feel heard with whatever they're going through. And the training for that is very, very good, very solid because it's done entirely over text. And so, nerdily as a writer, it's also a great. It's great exercise, and all of the training is about like how do you manage your tone over text so that you don't sound like you're, pushing people off or like judging things. Or one of the biggest tips that I can throw out for free is avoiding the question why. Because if someone is asking you, or someone's like confessing a feeling that they've been having, and you're like, why do you feel that way? Um, as a text that can come off so judgy and make people shut down. So it's about how do you reword that to, oh, what was the thing that made you feel that way is already such a big step in the right direction. Um, so that kind of work has been really important to me. I've done a lot with New York Cares, which is an organization in New York City that hosts sort of a huge umbrella. They're like an umbrella organization that hosts a whole bunch of volunteer opportunities for things all over the city. So I've done specifically a lot of like food prep work and food bank work. Um, just helping. It's one of the things that angers me the most in the world, that we have so much food and we still have people who are hungry just because we can't move it around.
Because of
Uh,
capitalism.
and because of capital, let's say
Yeah,
because
Hmm.
of
exactly.
capitalism.
Let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah, let's, okay, yeah. Yeah, so that. Um, uh, yeah, all of the above.
Okay.
If you're looking for somewhere to throw money, World Central Kitchen is a
Yes.
fantastic organization. They are working in LA right now. They are working in Palestine right now. So they're a global organization, trying to get food where it is needed the most.
Yes.
So
They do brilliant work.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're a great thing to support if you feel overwhelmed in trying to figure out where to donate money to. They're a
Absolutely.
go-to for me.
$110.
I'll also shout out the Ali Forney Center
Yes, in New
here
York. Mhm.
in New York City. They provide housing and other services for LGBTQ plus kids who have been most who are unhoused or have been kicked out of their houses because of their identities. And a great fun fact about them is that one of their newer residences is named after B. Arthur, because B. Arthur left a huge bequest to the Ali Forney Center in her will when she passed.
Yeah, well,
Um, so
solid
thank you,
ally.
B.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
All right. So if you could visit anywhere in the world, where would that be?
I've been lucky to see a lot of cool places. Um, and I'm at a point now where I where I would like to go, which is totally doable and I'll do sometime, is my grandparents used to live in Vermont, and I spent a lot of my childhood running around the woods in Vermont. And I would love to go back, maybe with my sister, and just revisit a lot of those old places that we grew up, and all those winding mountain roads. My grandparents lived like a town away from the town where they filmed Beetlejuice, or
Nice.
the outdoors parts of Beetlejuice. And my grandmother, I don't know if just because of that, because or this wasn't usually her taste, but she loved Beetlejuice. So we would watch it a lot as a family, and then we would go multiple times. Nothing would change, but we would go multiple times to do little self-guided Beetlejuice tours of I forget what that town. Oh, what's that town actually calls? I can't remember. Um, but yeah, it'd be like that one road of the town where, oh, that's the girls' school, that's
Hmm.
the hardware shop, which is actually a different kind of thing. This is the hill where they built the house. This is where the covered bridge was. They actually had to flood that river because it's just a tiny little stream, and there wasn't a covered bridge there, so they built a covered bridge. And I don't know why, I don't know how long this lasted afterwards, but when they removed the bridge that they had built, they, for some reason, just abandoned it on the side of the road outside of town. So we would also drive by the bridge on the side of the road uh, just to see. So
There you go.
it'd be fun to go back and revisit some of those.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Who, if anyone, was your first celebrity crush?
This was hard to think about because like like many of us, I didn't really know what was going on with me for a while. I was like, oh, I have a crush on these girls. Um, until I learned that like that feeling was like, oh, I just want to be friends with those girls. And
Yeah,
like
right.
these other feelings that I'm starting to have about boys are like what people are talking about when they have crushes. Um, so with that in mind, I remember a problematic early 90s movie called Ladybugs, in which, oh boy, in which Rodney Dangerfield has to coach a girls' soccer team for his boss for some reason that he works for. And in order to help these poor hapless girls start winning soccer games, he puts a boy on the team dressed as a girl. And that boy was Jonathan Brandis. Uh, and I remember having very confusing feelings about Jonathan Brandis, like trying on a dress in a movie.
Well, to be
Uh,
honest, Jonathan Brandis could play a very, very convincing tomboy lesbian. So,
exactly, right? It's like suddenly super androgynous
right.
and hitting all the things that I didn't know what to have feelings about. Um, yeah, a wild movie to look back at. And
It is. I know of
uh,
what you speak.
yeah, but then after, so I was really interested in Jonathan Brandis's career after that for some reason.
Couldn't get enough. All right,
Couldn't get
final
enough.
question. What's your personal favorite recipe that you make, and are you willing to share it with us?
I will definitely share it. So confession that I have listened to the other interviews that have come out so far this year, so I'm sorry to offer you another cookie, uh, but it is my thing. Uh, it's not a family heirloom recipe or anything. It was a recipe that I found online, but I have been tweaking it for myself. And they are ginger spice cookies.
Ooh,
Um, I am
Yum.
a big tabletop gamer, board gamer as well. That's my other big hobby. And I'm lucky to have a lot of friends in the city who I can get together with regularly. And these cookies are the thing that I always bring. And whatever people might think about my books, I know these cookies are a hit. Uh, so I know I'm putting something good into the world
there you
no
go.
matter what.
There you go.
And I make them weekly. My husband finally just bought me a cookie jar. He was like, "Here, you always have them, so just have a cookie jar that you can keep filled." So I keep that cookie jar filled. They're
Nice.
perfect tea cookies. I'm a big tea drinker as well. So yeah, they're absolutely my thing, and I will be happy to share the recipe.
Love it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, you made it through the list. Bravo.
Thank you.
So what's up next for you?
So I am uh still working on the first draft of a new book. Um what I can certainly say about it is that uh it is existential horror. It's a big cast of queers. It is about a group of theater friends, a theater company that is reuniting in their 40s and 50s to help find one of their own who has gone missing in his own house. Hmm.
Well,
Uh,
where's the best place for people to find you and keep up with those updates?
so I'm an aspiring recluse, so I'm not really
I
on
love that.
social
Oh, I
media
got to make a
much.
t-shirt with that.
Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I don't have a lot of public facing social media. I do have a website though, Mark with a K, markwilliamlindberg.com.
Mhm.
You can certainly contact me through there and you can check up on things there. Um, that's probably the best place. Or wherever my books are, the ebooks are available wherever you get your reading material. So a lot of
Mhm.
those places also have, follow this author kind of things,
Right.
where you can get updates when things come out. The plan is for this book to be out near the end of this year.
Perfect.
Um, so that's the plan.
Awesome. All right. Any final words of wisdom?
Read Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, which is my favorite book about writing or any creative work. It was actually assigned to me by my choreography teacher
Huh.
at theater school as just great advice for making stuff. So I recommend that. And then, just in a larger sense, uh, let's just be in your identity, find your people and lean on them. We all need to lean on our people right now. uh you are valid, you're beautiful. They can't take our identities away. uh which is what they would like to do. And the reason they have to fight so hard is because they cannot take our identities away, because it's just who we are. So, find your community. We're out here. You're not alone. Just going real wide with it at the end here, but that's what I have to say.
Love it. All right, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to M.W. Lindberg for joining us. Mark, thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for offering this opportunity to sort of. It's a nice. I'm a self-publisher, as I said. My empire is very small right now, and it's
more
great.
Monaco than France.
Yeah, and Monaco, if I can, it's like Liechtenstein, which is like up in the mountains, because I'm like trying to hide as well. But thank you for holding this opportunity for those of us at all points in our career. It was really great to be here and to chat with you.
It is our pleasure and honor. We at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. Follow us on YouTube. We're adding more there than you're going to hear in the audio podcast arena, including history of queer rights movements in both Madison, Wisconsin, South California, and Mexico City. The show was produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.roadpodcast.com. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye-bye.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.